Now, here's the important thing about the time after a breakup. Sometimes what can happen is the fear of rejection, because we've just gone through a breakup, and the fear and the pain of rejection is so heavy, and it's so obvious and hard and sensitive, that we now go into a shell. So we go into this space where, because we're afraid of this happening again, we're afraid of the rejection happening again, that we disconnect from wanting any sort of connection or relationship, because getting into that relationship or a connection could mean this like deathly feeling of rejection all over again. It could mean this like disastrous feeling of pain all over again. And so in that stage now, a lot of people, they go into like, there is a hermit stage, but the hermit stage, from what I've recognized, is where you actually do the inner work in that space, and you know at the end of it you're ready to move on. But a lot of people go into the isolation stage. The isolation stage is when you just cut off from it, because you're like, and you get into this, it's kind of like a rage stage, where you say, fuck guys, fuck girls, fuck these people, like, fuck my family, all of them are just out to get me. And so we move almost into a bit of a victimized stage at that point, which is extremely handicapping. It doesn't allow us to actually do the introspective work, it doesn't allow us to actually do the inner work. And instead, at that point, we just sit and we start living on a lower vibration, which allows us to have so much more resentment and anger towards people around. And so it's very difficult to get out of that stage if we don't challenge ourselves, if we don't do our inner work, but then get vulnerable post that. So I saw a question here which was kind of relevant on that topic, and I think the first two questions are kind of relevant. How do you know when you are ready to move on, and how do you know you're dating properly after a breakup? Like, how do you know that that you're dating the correct person? So I'll try and answer both of these in one question. There is no fixed time after you break up to know that you're ready to move on. There's no fixed, date, time, processing. In fact, all of us process emotions differently. All of us process inner work differently. And so there's no fixed regulation being like, okay, actually take 2 months and then you should be ready to go. No, it matters. What matters is what you've done in those 2 months, how you feel at the end of the 2 months. But what I can tell you, and this starts the next question, becomes how do you know you're dating properly? You only know the right time when you establish what is the sense of security that I'm feeling. This is what's important. The point after the breakup is important for you to do something with it. It's important for you to take that time and make it mean something for you. So if you take that time to be able to do your inner work, you take that time to be able to work on yourself, then there comes a point where you start to feel, okay, I'm more secure now to be a little more vulnerable. I'm more secure to be able to open up more. I feel a little safer in trying to reach out and establish connection and be a little more vulnerable. And when you start to feel that, that's when you kind of know to yourself, okay, I'm feeling more secure in being able to reach out. Maybe I can start establishing, getting out, dating again. Now, this leads to the next question. It's very important in this stage to still observe yourself, because you actually may not be fully ready. And how you know you're not fully ready is if you get hypersensitive to rejection all over again, or you get hypersensitive to a previous pattern showing up, or you get hypersensitive to the possibility of failure of the relationship becoming bigger than the chance of success. And what that means is self-sabotage, right? Like, what are the patterns you're bringing in? What are you trying to connect with people? As soon as you connect, do you immediately lay down the law? Are you trying to be vulnerable? All of those things. And so if you test it in that moment and you're sensing that you're not secure enough, this is my honest opinion, honest advice to you guys. Take a little more time. Focus a little more on your sense of internal security so that you're more at peace before you get back into dating. When I take people through the Gauntlet program, if they're not dating, I highly recommend for them to stay single in that space. If they're in relationships, it's on the opposite. I tell them this is an amazing time to use your relationship as a reflection of the things that you're going through. So the Gauntlet is our 8-week inner work program and a relationship development program. So when people go through that, I say, if you're not dating, now's a good time for you to take this time just with yourself and just discover more of who you are, so that you don't necessarily have the pressure or the distraction of somebody else's emotions working on what you're trying to work through. And if you're with someone, like I said, now you've already made that commitment, you're in here, use this as a space and time to be able to work through, and as a reflection of what you're going through. However, in this space, like I'm telling you guys, at the end of those 8 weeks, at the end of whatever period of time, you have to establish for yourself, do I want to take the next step and try and connect with someone? Do I want to take the next step and try and reach out? Now you do that. Coming to the next question, how do you know if you're dating the right way? There is, again, no right and wrong way to date. The only way that you know it's a success is based on what is your feeling after that attempt of connection with someone. Now, something I can tell you that I feel has happened a lot in my life, not a lot, but it's happened before in my life, is, remember I told you after that moment, like I felt so hurt, right? And like that relationship really like hurt me. I was also really afraid of rejection. I was also really afraid of trying to establish connection. So what I noticed is, even when I was attempting to date people and I met someone, like, and I'd say, hey, do you want to go out, blah, blah, blah. Even if I initiated it, I always had one foot out the door. And so I was always looking for things that I could say to my friends, yeah, this is not going to work because she's like this. Oh, yeah, the distance. Oh, yeah, blah, blah, blah. And I was not willing to give myself a chance to be vulnerable, but that wasn't because the person was not necessarily worth it. It's because I was afraid of rejection all over again. I was afraid of, what if I invest so much of my life, my space, my time, and my emotions all over again, and if it just ends? What does that make it seem about me? Plus, also, I don't want to go through that pain all over again. And that's a very human tendency that we go through, where we step into this place where we're like, no, I just don't want to deal with this, so I'm going to be one foot out the door. Anytime there's conflict, I'll be like, yep, told you so. This sucked. I knew it. Anytime there's like a challenge, I'll tell my friends, yeah, she's like this, blah, blah, blah. It's not going to work. But that's because that's what I said. That's our ego, again, trying to not let us be vulnerable. So always take a moment when you're dating. One thing I can, again, add value to you for dating is that, remember, relationships are a reflection of you. The person you've attracted is a reflection of what you're feeling and what you're going through. It's not just that they are them, I'm me, and we've just met in this world. There's a magnetism that draws us to every single person that we draw, even the ones who are not good for us. Because everybody's meant to provide us some value. Every interaction that we have with human beings provides us something about ourselves. And so if you've attracted this person, even that you're dating, whether it's online, whatever else, if you've decided to establish connection with them, but you're feeling uncomfortable, ask yourself, what is in the discomfort? Is it rejection? Is it a fear of vulnerability? Is it a fear of making connection again? Is it a fear of being used? Is it a fear of using? Is it a fear of not being able to control ourselves and stepping into like coping mechanisms like cheating, other addictions? What is in this space that I'm afraid of stepping into? But you have to take this time with yourself to do it a little bit. Because if you rely on the other person to take you through it, you're going to start depending on them to now regulate you. You're going to start depending on them to provide you these reflections. And so instead, take this time just with yourself, reflect on it, and then what happens out of it is that you get a much better perspective for yourself and says, maybe I am just afraid of being vulnerable. Maybe I am just afraid of like the rejection aspect. And so with that, any of those feelings that you're feeling, always come back to giving your inner child and yourself a little love and security. Why is it so important? I sound like a stuck tape recorder when I tell people internal security is always important. Give yourself internal security, most important thing. But it's because that helps you make better decisions for yourself. If you feel more grounded, more at peace and safer within who you are, the chances of you picking what's actually good for you become so much higher, right? So if I gave you, like, let's say I gave you a bunch of money, or I gave you a bunch of food rather, and then I took you, so you've eaten, now you're full, you're feeling a little better, and then I take you to a buffet at like some shitty restaurant where food is not good at all. Are you gonna like indulge in that? Or are you gonna be like, I think I can do better than this, and I'm feeling good, I'm kind of full right now, I'm good. You'll say, no, I'm not going to dive into the bullshit food, right? Because you know what you can handle and what you're willing to handle in stomach. And that's what's important about, if we can create that sense of internal security for ourselves, then we don't need to create that external dependency on it. We don't need to think that someone else needs to fill up our fuel sources. So coming back to that question of, okay, what do I do? How do I know I'm dating the right person? Keep reflecting back as to how you feel with it. Is it challenging? If it's challenging, it's good. But is it breaking down your internal security? Do you feel worse than if you felt better than if you were with that person, right? Those are important questions to ask yourself. And again, another good thing is to notice where the ego is trying to play a part. Because like I said, as in the case with me, the ego steps in to mask how we're feeling sometimes and says, no, this person's not good for you, no, this. And then it keeps wanting to move from person to person to person, never actually meeting success. So sometimes you have to make yourself ready. You have to, if you're in that process and you're trying it, you have to take a bigger plunge of vulnerability. You have to take a bigger plunge of trust. But you must do it while you're simultaneously working on yourself and your own internal security. Because if you don't do that, then I can tell you with surety that the decisions that you will be making in terms of the person, the situation, the people, the energy that you attract will not necessarily reflect what you deserve for yourself. They won't necessarily reflect the happiness, the connection, and those things that you really deserve for yourself. make sure that when you come out of a breakup or even an end of any kind of relationship, right? Like whatever it is, even with your family, even with anything else, take that time to be able to just establish for yourself, like, okay, what does this, what does this relationship mean to me? What has it been doing for me? What is it like, what value am I getting from it? And why do I feel so triggered by it? And I think all of that will actually help you have, all of that will actually help you be able to better establish what your connection is for yourself. It'll help you better establish, even like I said, even relationships with parents. This is a big one where after a relationship with parents, we're like, I don't want to talk to my mom anymore. I'm blocking her, not talking to her for like months. Ask yourself, why it is that you were getting so triggered? Ask yourself, why it is that it was like pulling on your heartstrings so much? And if you're able to do that, you actually may get a certain piece of insight into what it is that you really want from your mom, that because she's not able to give you, you're feeling really triggered and bothered by. This is another case of what someone was sharing with me today, was that they found that in their relationship with their partner keeps getting triggered, and their partner keeps getting bothered by, when they spend time with like their friends, everybody else. And so the partner says, go spend time with them, go do that, you don't prioritize me, etc. And I started taking this, this person through it. She was on my program, and I started to, sorry, I'm just blocking some unnecessary comments, as you can imagine. And I started to take her through this process. And I said, maybe it's just that your partner, who's a man, really just wants to be able to connect with you and ask you for time. But his own conditioning and the way he's been shamed around asking for things and asking for emotional connection, maybe that just prevents him from being able to ask you safely. Maybe that just prevents it from him being able to ask you vulnerably. And because of that, he, with his conditioning and his shame, instead he wants to push it onto you and say, you're the one who does this, you're not doing it, blah, blah, blah. That's projection, right? Projection is our inability to safely express our insecurities. And so we put that blame onto someone else. But maybe all he wants is a little bit of love. Maybe all he wants is a hug. Now, it's not necessarily your responsibility to have to give it to him. But if you prioritize the relationship more than you prioritize being right, or more than you prioritize being, and him being wrong or proving a point, then maybe this is a perfect opportunity for you to be able to establish like beautiful connection with you and realize the value of your relationship, using a challenging moment where his ego is showing up to actually create a beautiful like flower of connection through it. So use the same principle with your families, with everybody else. Take that time for you to reflect. Reflection and introspection are amongst the most powerful things for us creating a better life for ourselves.